What a beautiful day for Dwarf Fortress, and by that I mean it's a snowy wasteland outside, so stay inside and play a video game. One thing you'll hear a lot if you're doing any kind of research or looking into Dwarf Fortress is that losing is fun, and that's a motto of the game that may sound a little strange, but it's really about the mindset. Because Dwarf Fortress has no victory condition. And so really, the only thing you can do is have fun until inevitably something happens and you lose or get bored of your fort, which can also happen. Especially in an area like where this one is, because I specifically chose the biome to be on the safer side if people are trying to play along with me. But anyway, we still got some stuff to do. One of the first things I want to do is get farming going. And it looks like we have a dwarf preparing the farm plots, building them as it were. So I'll let him finish that. Got people bringing seeds up. And because I put in those stockpiles, you can see up in the upper right, it says idlers 3, and that's how many dwarves are doing nothing. And that was like 5 when I first got here and was doing stuff. But that number, unless you're micromanaging a lot, will inevitably keep growing as you get more dwarfs in your fort. Alright, so we're on the last plot here. And then we'll hit Q, and we'll start looking at these plots. And they have their own little menu. And you'll see at the bottom it says fallow, fertilize, seasonal fertilization, stuff like that. The important 4 ones are A, B, C, and D, though, and those switch the season that you're designating. So right now it's on spring because it is spring, but I can also set what I want them to grow in. I can also set what I want them to grow in the other seasons. But first we're going to start on spring. So the first thing is I want one that's just year-round plump helmets, and that's one of the reasons why plump helmets are good, is because you can see, like here in winter for instance, you can't grow very much. I think you might be able to prepare dimple cups as food possibly, but you definitely can't eat them raw, so plump helmets are the only thing that grow in winter that you can also eat in winter. The next thing I want, the next most important thing, is pigtails, which are for thread, and you can only grow those in summer and autumn, I believe, yes. So for this one for now, we'll say we'll have this also grow sweet pods and pigtails, dimple cups, why not? Then over here we want quarry bushes. Those are good for soap industry. And like I said when I was embarking, if you watch that video, the quarry bush seeds are actually called rock nuts for whatever reason. Plump helmets. What am I missing? Summer. Okay. And then basically I'm just going to rotate through these and assign each one kind of a priority crop and then something else on the off seasons. Alright, so we have all the farm plots set up here. Just have them set to grow a little bit of everything, whether or not I have the seeds for them. And once you get a organizer going, which is a noble position, you'll actually be able to know if you have the seeds or not when you're designating these things. But right now, I don't have that information, so I just get to say, put those if you have them. So now food will be growing, and that should be more than enough for 7 dwarves. Then it'll go down here to the kitchen once it's processed. So I might as well make a quern while I'm at it. Here we go, quern, or Q. And we have a dwarf digging out the dining area. So while he's doing that, and what I'm actually going to do down here, and the reason you can see this square, by the way, is because there's a downstair above it. And then I'm actually going to make room for horizontal, like, meeting area style of thing. There's a few different rooms the dwarves will just kind of hang out in. And so I'm going to put, like, a statue garden or something like that down here. And we'll put a doorway there and do a 2-wide hallway. Because this floor is, the plan right now is to mostly have this just be living spaces. Since I'm going to give each dwarf their own living space, they're not actually going to be using these hallways all at the same time very often. But just for the sake of symmetry, I'll flip the hallway on that side. And then I'm actually going to make this one a 3-wide, and I'll put probably noble housing and probably the hospital over here. So I guess I'll also make this 3-wide for the sake of symmetry. Might as well. Could put some other stuff down there. And then this is where you start getting into a lot of personal preference stuff for dwarf rooms. They can be as small as this, because all you need is a bed. So a bed, door, it's like a little tiny closet. You can also just do it out one farther, then you have bed, empty space, or storage, door, and that's enough. A normal dwarf is fine with that. I like to be a little gracious with the space and actually give them 2x2 rooms. And it's mostly because I think they look nice. And then they'll also have some room to just throw things on the floor if they get stuff. And I can put in cabinets or other storage if I feel the need. And I like to do hallways of 5 on each side. And that way it's pretty easy to keep count of how many you have. So a normal hallway would look something like that. Alright, so we got our doors working on stuff. One other thing I want to have is bins. I don't need them just yet, but bins are important because they are one of the main ways to store objects in stockpiles and keep them organized. So we want wooden bins, and I'm just going to make 10 for now because I don't want to just leave something made of wood on repeat. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but since wood is a little more finite than stone, that's just a personal preference thing that I tend to do. We still have most of the doors just kind of milling around in that meeting area, or meeting zone rather, that I made earlier. Some more doors and chairs while I'm at it. And summer has arrived on the calendar, so we're in the next season now. And you can see in the farm plots there, where it is horizontal, 2 horizontal lines, I guess that's an equal sign, instead of a tilde, is where seeds have been planted. So you can see the dwarf running back and forth. It looks like... Do we have seeds down here? I'm pretty sure I set this to not have seeds, right? So I don't know why he's running down here to get seeds. They should all be up there, but it could be that they don't have enough barrels or pots to put seeds in. And if a dwarf doesn't have the appropriate container to store something in, which is usually only the case with like food stuffs or seeds and things like that, they can't actually put it anywhere, and usually they won't even make it to begin with. Alright, if you heard any of those beeps and boops, which you probably did, that was my phone going off, and I had to jump up and get something, so that's probably also why there was a fade out or a cut or something there. But anyway, now that we have farms going, and we have food basically handled for now, we can start moving on to higher order priorities. And the next one is probably going to be defense. So that means we're going to have to set up a barracks for our military and actually set up our military, which is a little on the complicated side now. I'm lucky because I dealt with the system before it got a lot of new features added to it, so I only had to like half learn it, but it's something we'll be getting into. And I'm planning on this series, as it keeps going, getting into more and more advanced things. I'm probably going to try to set up an inn, a library, all that good stuff. So one screen I actually want to look at now to see the status of everything is to hit Z. And this is the summary of the fort, more or less, over a few different screens. And so right now, we don't have anything listed under created wealth because it says, or trade information, because it says we don't have a broker with the appraisal skill. And we do have a dwarf with the appraisal skill, he's just not assigned to be a broker yet. So we'll get to that. But also another few things I want to look at are food stores. And it looks like we are actually fairly low on food. Not awfully low for 7 dwarves, but getting a little low. And it has, the numbers have question marks next to them because we don't have an organizer actually keeping stocks. So once we get someone doing that, we'll have more accurate numbers. We also have the number of dwarves per job, number of military dwarves, stuff like that. We can go to the kitchen. We can tell our dwarves what to do with different things. This is very useful because there are some things like pigtails. They'll by default be set to brew. I believe you can brew them and not cook them, but we don't want them to be brewed because we want to use them for thread. So once we get some of that going, I'll be back here to mess with that. Seeds automatically are set to not be cooked, which is good because you don't want your seeds getting cooked. And I don't like my dwarves cooking my drinks either, because dwarves can use your alcohol in their recipes. Well, it's not really recipes. Basically, when a dwarf gets assigned to make food, they just grab the nearest foodstuffs and like turn it into something. So let's see. We also have stone. Gives you some information and what you have. I don't really use this screen at all, but because for me it would be easier if I wanted information on a stone to just look it up on the wiki rather than try to sort through that screen. Stocks, I'm not going to use this screen, but this is a big old list of everything at the fort. And again, you're not going to get much information out of this now because we don't have our organizer set up yet. But so one thing I think I want to do is add a couple jobs to some of these guys that don't do anything. The doctor I want to leave alone. But this administrator, yeah, I want to give him some more stuff. So I'm going to go to labor. I'm not going to go to labor. I'm going to go to preferences and then labor. And then I want him to help with farming and also gather plants outside. So I'm going to go to farming related and plant gathering and farming fields and also plant processing. And I'm actually going to, on our farmer dwarf, actually going to put plant processing on him as well so that he can process plants. And since we don't have anyone else, I think I'll also give him milling, so that can get all underway. And then now that I have someone set to plant gathering, what I can do, and I'm going to use my hotkey to go back to the surface, is I can open my designate menu and push P for gather plants. And this is really, really useful if you are somewhere that has plants growing around, because you can gather up plants that then you can use for food and, more importantly, drink. So that's one of the big pluses to being in an area like this, is that I have plenty of stuff to work with if I just need food or drink desperately all of a sudden for no particular reason, which can happen. I'm fine on drinks right now. It's more food than I'm worried about at the moment. because I did take kind of a long time to get my farms going because I'm trying to do one thing at a time. If I was playing casually by myself, I would probably be multitasking a lot more and setting up a lot more things at a time. So our kitchen is almost done. Some of our rooms are set up. So see, I also want some beds, but he is making bins right now, so we'll just wait until he's done. Later on, once we have a particular noble set up, we can kind of tell the fort to make something, and then it'll kind of sort itself out, but until then we'll have to wait. So if you press N, you go to the noble screen, nobles and administrators, and I can go ahead and get my broker because the broker doesn't need anything, and this will list relevant skills. So you see the guy I gave appraiser is listed at the top because he has the most relevant skills, and he has adequate appraiser, which is the only related skill. No one else has anything relevant, so obviously we'll make him that. And you'll see in gray in square brackets, require, demand, mandate. And demands and mandates are basically reserved for mayors and other officials you can't really control, but requirements, for a lot of these positions, they will need anything from an office to a room, a dining room, and an office, which is why I haven't appointed anyone yet, is because I'm waiting to be able to get those out. And we can also do this for the doctor. And so he'll do doctor-y stuff now, once I have a hospital set up for him. Where are my miners? They're both making things. And this is the downside to giving your miners these other skills is now, and I'm actually going to take my pots and crafts off of repeat for now, so that I can have at least one miner doing something while the other one is making things out of wood. And I'm actually going to also start laying out noble quarters here. And unfortunately, I'm going to have some like empty space that's not doing anything over here, which I like to avoid because, again, I don't think it looks very good. But what I'm going to do is for nobles, I tend to like this arrangement. For nobles, you have to give them slightly bigger rooms because they will require a room of a certain quality. So whereas no-name dwarf who just wants somewhere to sleep, he's fine as long as he has a bed. The nicer the room is and the more private it is, the better. But you can make, if you just put a bed in a room, as long as it's inside, you can designate it to just kind of be a public sleeping area. And I'll get to that once I start putting beds down. But ooh, had a brain fart. A dwarf not having a bed to sleep in just tends to make them a little unhappy. Anything from like, I didn't have a bed to sleep in. If they sleep outside, they can have unhappy thoughts about having to sleep like on the dirt, stuff like that. So what I like to do is 4x4 rooms tend to be fairly easy to get up to the requirement for most nobles. So I like to do little kind of cornered sets of 3 because they'll want, like I said, a dining room, office, and bedroom. So we'll go ahead and do that. And the organizer actually just needs an office. So if I really wanted to, I could just slap him in one of these rooms I have here. And I think I actually might do that temporarily, just so I can get that sorted out. So he just needs a chair, and that's basically it. So Dwarf will come and install those. Then you press Q, and when you hover over a chair, you'll get the make throne room or study option. And doors also have some options. You can forbid passage, which means dwarves will not go through that door. You can keep it tightly closed, which means that if it's not tightly closed, animals can open it, is the main thing. And then set as internal, I'm not sure exactly what that actually changes for some reason.